The aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifted through our house, a comforting scent that usually signaled the start of a peaceful morning. Emily was already up, humming a little tune as she moved around the kitchen. I watched her from the doorway, a familiar warmth spreading through me. She looked so serene, so effortlessly beautiful in her favorite blue robe. Her hair, a cascade of auburn waves, fell loosely around her shoulders. I remember thinking, not for the first time, how lucky I was. We had built a life together, a life that, from the outside at least, looked like a picture postcard of happiness. A beautiful home in the suburbs, 2 successful careers, and a close circle of friends. We hosted dinner parties, went on weekend getaways, and shared quiet evenings curled up on the sofa. We were, to all appearances, the couple everyone envied. This morning, though, a subtle unease prickled at the edge of my contentment. It was a feeling I couldn't quite place, a whisper of something amiss that had been nagging at me for weeks. Emily had been different lately, more distant, perhaps. She seemed preoccupied, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. There were late nights at the office, business trips she hadn't mentioned until the last minute, and a new, almost frantic energy about her that I couldn't understand. I had tried to talk to her about it, of course. Asked if everything was all right, if she was stressed, if there was anything I could do. But she always brushed my concerns aside with a reassuring smile and a quick, "Everything's fine, honey. Just a lot going on at work." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. The alternative, the thought that something was truly wrong, was too unsettling to contemplate. I walked into the kitchen, kissing her lightly on the cheek. "Morning, love," I said, trying to sound casual, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. "Morning," she replied, her smile a little too bright, a little too quick. She poured me a cup of coffee, her hand brushing mine as she handed it to me. The touch, once a source of comfort and connection, felt different today, slightly distant. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence between us punctuated only by the clinking of our mugs. Emily was scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. I watched her, studying her face, searching for a clue, a sign, anything that would explain the shift in our dynamic. But her expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed mask that hid whatever thoughts or emotions were swirling beneath the surface. I felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that the picture-perfect life we had created together was nothing more than a carefully constructed facade, a fragile porcelain doll just waiting to be shattered. The days that followed were a blur of forced normalcy. I buried myself in work, trying to ignore the growing chasm between Emily and me. I told myself it was just a phase, a rough patch that we would navigate together. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a suspicion that something was fundamentally wrong. I found myself watching Emily more closely, noticing things I had previously overlooked. The way she would flinch when my phone rang, the way she would quickly turn her phone screen away when I entered the room, the whispered phone calls she would take on the balcony late at night. Each observation was like a drop of poison, slowly seeping into my veins, poisoning my trust, my love, my very sense of reality. One evening, I came home early from work, hoping to surprise Emily with a romantic dinner. I found the house empty, a strange silence hanging in the air. As I walked through the living room, I noticed a small, leather-bound notebook lying on the coffee table. It was Emily's journal, a private space where she poured out her thoughts and feelings. I hesitated, knowing I should respect her privacy, but the temptation was too strong. I picked up the journal, my heart pounding in my chest. The first few entries were mundane, detailing her daily routine, her work projects, her plans with friends. But as I turned the pages, the entries became more personal, more intimate. And then, I stumbled upon a passage that made my blood run cold. "David makes me feel alive," she had written. "He sees me, he hears me, he understands me in a way Mark never has. I feel a connection with him, a passion, that I haven't felt in years. I know it's wrong, but I can't help myself. I'm drawn to him like a moth to a flame. David." The name was like a punch to the gut. David was a colleague of Emily's, a charming, charismatic man who had recently joined her company. I had met him a few times at office functions, and I remembered feeling a pang of jealousy at the way he looked at Emily, the way he made her laugh. Now, reading her words, the truth hit me with the force of a hurricane. Emily was having an affair. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with my life, was betraying me in the most intimate way possible. I felt a surge of rage, a primal urge to lash out, to break something, to hurt someone. But the anger was quickly replaced by a deep, aching sadness. The world I thought I knew, the life I thought I had built, was crumbling around me. The woman I loved was a stranger, a liar, a cheat, and I, the fool, had been blind to it all. I closed the journal, my hands trembling. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach, the air knocked out of me. I sank onto the sofa, my mind reeling. The image of Emily and David together, laughing, touching, kissing, played over and over in my head like a twisted film reel. I felt sick, betrayed, violated. The serpent had entered our garden, and our paradise was lost. The discovery of Emily's journal was like falling down a rabbit hole. I became obsessed, consumed by the need to know everything. I started monitoring her phone, intercepting her emails, tracking her movements. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. It wasn't just David. There were others. A casual acquaintance from her yoga class, a client she had met through work, even an old flame from college she had reconnected with online. Emily, it seemed, was living a double life, a secret world of clandestine meetings, whispered conversations, and stolen moments. Each new revelation was a fresh wound, a reminder of my own blindness and naivete. I felt like a fool, a pawn in her twisted game. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had shared my life with, was a complete stranger. She was a master of deception, weaving a web of lies so intricate, so convincing, that I had been completely ensnared. I watched her, studied her, trying to understand how she could be so callous, so indifferent to my pain. She would come home from work, her eyes sparkling with a secret joy, and tell me about her long day or her difficult client. She would kiss me goodnight, her lips brushing mine with a practiced tenderness, while her mind was clearly elsewhere. I felt a growing sense of detachment, as if I were watching a play unfold, a drama in which I was both the protagonist and the audience. The anger I had felt initially was slowly giving way to a cold, calculating fury. I wanted to hurt her, to make her pay for the pain she had caused me. But I knew that a simple confrontation, a messy divorce, wouldn't be enough. I wanted something more, something that would truly make her understand the consequences of her actions. I wanted revenge. The idea took root in my mind, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. I began to plot, to scheme, to envision a scenario in which Emily would be exposed, humiliated, stripped bare of her carefully constructed facade. I would use her own weapons against her, her own lies and deceptions, to bring her down. I would become the puppet master, pulling the strings, orchestrating her downfall with a cold, ruthless precision. The plan began to take shape in my mind, a complex, multi-layered scheme that would involve not just Emily, but also her lovers and our circle of friends. I would play the long game, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. I would become the architect of my own revenge, the author of Emily's downfall. And in the end, she would understand the true meaning of betrayal. Living with Emily while plotting my revenge was a surreal experience. It was like inhabiting a parallel universe, where everything was familiar yet utterly alien. I went through the motions of our daily life, eating breakfast together, discussing mundane household chores, even sharing the occasional intimate moment. But it was all a performance, a carefully crafted illusion designed to keep Emily unsuspecting. I wore a mask of normalcy, a facade of the loving, trusting husband, while inside, I was a volcano of simmering rage and resentment. The deception was exhausting, a constant tightrope walk between maintaining my composure and succumbing to the urge to confront her, to scream, to break something. But I knew that I couldn't afford to lose control. My plan required patience, precision, and above all, secrecy. I had to be smarter, more cunning than Emily and her lovers. I had to outmaneuver them, outsmart them, and ultimately outplay them at their own game. To the outside world, I presented a picture of serenity. I continued to excel at work, maintained my friendships, and even managed to crack the occasional joke. No one suspected a thing. They saw the same old Mark, the reliable, easygoing guy with the perfect life. Little did they know that beneath the surface, I was a man on a mission, a man driven by a single-minded purpose: to destroy the woman who had shattered my world. The irony was not lost on me. Emily, the master of deception, was being deceived by the one person she thought she knew best. I was living a lie, but it was a lie with a purpose. It was a means to an end, a necessary step on the path to my ultimate goal. And with each passing day, the mask of sanity I wore grew heavier, the burden of my secret more oppressive. But I couldn't give up now. I had come too far, invested too much. There was no turning back. Weeks turned into months. The initial shock of Emily's betrayal had subsided, replaced by a cold, methodical focus. I had meticulously gathered information, documenting every detail of her affairs. Dates, times, locations, even the pet names she used with her lovers. I felt like a detective, piecing together the fragments of her double life, building a case against her. But this wasn't just about exposing her infidelity. It was about dismantling her, piece by piece, revealing the true Emily beneath the carefully constructed persona. I started subtly manipulating the situations around her. I would accidentally mention David's name in front of her husband, knowing that he was already suspicious of their close relationship. I would forward her work emails to colleagues, highlighting her inappropriate flirtations with clients. I even befriended one of her lovers, pretending to be a sympathetic ear, all the while gathering more ammunition to use against her. The plan was complex, like a carefully choreographed dance. Each step had to be perfectly timed, each move calculated to maximize the damage. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, walking a fine line between justice and obsession. But the thought of Emily's betrayal fueled me, driving me forward. I justified my actions by telling myself that she deserved it, that she had brought this upon herself. The tension in our house was palpable, though Emily remained oblivious. She continued her affairs, believing she was untouchable, that her secrets were safe. She would come home from her trysts, her face flushed with excitement, her eyes sparkling with deceit. And I would watch her, a silent observer, a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. I knew that the time was coming soon. The pieces of my plan were falling into place. The storm clouds were gathering. I could feel the anticipation building, a dark, thrilling energy coursing through me. The mask I had been wearing for so long was beginning to feel suffocating, like a second skin I was desperate to shed. I was ready to unleash the truth, to expose Emily's lies, and to watch her world crumble around her. The storm was coming, and I was about to unleash its fury. The annual Christmas party for Emily's company was approaching. It was always a lavish affair, held at a swanky downtown hotel, with free-flowing champagne and enough gossip to fuel a small city. I knew this was the perfect opportunity to set my plan in motion. The first target, David. Emily had been particularly careless with David, her infatuation clouding her judgment. They had grown bolder, their whispered phone calls replaced by lunchtime rendezvous and late-night drinks. I had meticulously documented their encounters, compiling a dossier of evidence that would be impossible to ignore. On the night of the party, I watched Emily get ready, her excitement palpable. She was wearing a stunning red dress, her hair styled in loose waves, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I felt a surge of disgust, a visceral reaction to her beauty, her confidence, her utter disregard for my feelings. She kissed me goodbye, her lips barely grazing my cheek, and then she was gone, disappearing into the night to meet her lover. I waited an hour, then two, allowing them time to settle into their usual routine of stolen glances and whispered conversations. Then I made my move. I sent an anonymous email to David's wife, attaching the photos and messages I had collected. The email was brief, to the point, and devastatingly effective. Within minutes, David's phone erupted. He excused himself from Emily's side, his face pale, his hands trembling. I watched from across the room as he took the call, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to horror. Emily, oblivious to the drama unfolding, continued to chat with her colleagues, a smile plastered on her face. The confrontation was swift and brutal. David's wife, a formidable woman with a fiery temper, arrived at the party like a whirlwind. She marched straight up to David and Emily, her voice cutting through the festive chatter. The accusations flew, followed by tears, denials, and finally, a stunned silence. The music stopped, the conversations died down, and all eyes turned to the unfolding drama. Emily, caught in the spotlight, her lies exposed, looked like a deer caught in headlights. The carefully constructed facade she had built around herself crumbled, revealing the scared, vulnerable woman beneath. David, his career and marriage in ruins, slunk away, leaving Emily to face the consequences of her actions alone. This was just the beginning, the first crack in Emily's carefully constructed world. The first domino had fallen, and the rest would soon follow. I watched the scene unfold, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. The carousel of lies was starting to spin, and Emily was in for a wild ride. The fallout from the Christmas party was swift and brutal. News of Emily's affair spread like wildfire through her company and our social circle. Friends and colleagues, once envious of our seemingly perfect life, now looked at us with pity and judgment. Emily became a pariah, ostracized by the very people she had once considered her closest confidants. I watched her unravel, her carefully cultivated image shattered into a million pieces. The confident, outgoing woman I had once known was replaced by a shadow of her former self. She withdrew from social gatherings, her laughter silenced, her eyes filled with a haunting sadness. The weight of her betrayal, the consequences of her actions, were finally crashing down upon her. But my plan was far from over. The exposure of her affair with David was just the first act in a much larger drama. I had other targets in my sights, other lovers who had played a role in Emily's web of deceit, and I was determined to make them all pay. I began to leak information to their spouses, their employers, their families. I used anonymous emails, burner phones, and even hired a private investigator to gather evidence. I was meticulous, relentless, and utterly ruthless. I wanted to create a chain reaction, a ripple effect that would spread through Emily's life, destroying everything she held dear. The next to fall was Michael, the yoga instructor. His wife, a devoutly religious woman, was devastated by the news of his infidelity. She filed for divorce, taking their children and leaving him with nothing but his shame and regret. Then came James, the old college flame, whose fiancée broke off their engagement after discovering his secret rendezvous with Emily. One by one, Emily's lovers were exposed, their lives turned upside down, their reputations tarnished. With each downfall, Emily's isolation grew. She became a ghost in her own life, haunted by the wreckage she had created. Her career stalled, her friendships dissolved, and her family distanced themselves from her. She was alone, adrift in a sea of her own making. I watched her descent with a mixture of satisfaction and a strange, unexpected sadness. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? To see her suffer, to make her pay for the pain she had caused me. But there was a part of me, a small, lingering part, that still cared about her, that still remembered the woman I had once loved. Emily, once the life of the party, now found herself alone. The invitations stopped coming, the phone calls went unanswered, and the once familiar faces she encountered in the grocery store or at the gym turned away with barely disguised disdain. The whispers followed her wherever she went, a constant reminder of her fall from grace. Her work became her only refuge, a place where she could lose herself in the familiar routine of spreadsheets and presentations. But even there, the whispers followed her. Her colleagues, once friendly and supportive, now kept their distance, their conversations hushed when she approached. She could feel their judgment, their disapproval, weighing heavily upon her. The isolation was suffocating. Emily, who had always thrived on social interaction, now found herself trapped in a silent world of her own making. The walls of her carefully constructed life were closing in, leaving her with no escape from the consequences of her actions. She tried to reach out to me, to apologize, to explain. But I remained distant, my responses curt and dismissive. I had become a master of emotional detachment, my heart hardened by the betrayal I had endured. I watched her crumble, her desperation growing with each passing day, and I felt a perverse satisfaction in her suffering. The house, once a sanctuary of shared laughter and intimate moments, now felt like a prison. The silence between us was deafening, punctuated only by the occasional muffled sob or the clatter of dishes. Emily would spend hours staring out the window, her face etched with a deep sadness, her eyes reflecting the emptiness within. I knew that my plan was working. Emily was broken, her spirit crushed, her life in ruins. The woman who had once danced through life with carefree abandon was now a shell of her former self, haunted by the ghosts of her past. The carousel of lies had taken its toll, and she was paying the price. My revenge was not confined to the shadows. I wanted Emily's humiliation to be complete, her downfall a public spectacle. I began to plant seeds of doubt about her professional competence, subtly undermining her credibility with clients and colleagues. I leaked confidential information, spread rumors about her work ethic, and even anonymously reported her to the regulatory board for alleged misconduct. The whispers turned into murmurs, the murmurs into accusations. Emily's professional reputation, once impeccable, began to crumble. Clients withdrew their business, colleagues distanced themselves, and her superiors launched an internal investigation. She was called into meetings, questioned about her actions, and subjected to intense scrutiny. The pressure mounted, the stress unbearable. The final blow came in the form of a public exposé. I had anonymously contacted a local journalist, feeding him information about Emily's affairs and her alleged professional misconduct. The story broke on the front page of the city newspaper, a salacious account of her double life, complete with photos and incriminating details. Emily's name was dragged through the mud, her reputation irreparably damaged. The public humiliation was devastating. Emily became the subject of gossip and ridicule, her face plastered across social media, her story shared in hushed tones at cocktail parties. She was the fallen angel, the woman who had it all and threw it away for a few moments of illicit pleasure. I watched the spectacle unfold from a distance, a sense of grim satisfaction filling me. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? To see her exposed, to witness her downfall, to make her pay for the pain she had caused me. But as I watched her crumble under the weight of public scrutiny, a flicker of doubt began to gnaw at my conscience. Was this justice or was it simply cruelty? Emily's world had imploded. She lost her job, her friends, her reputation, and her dignity. The woman who had once exuded confidence and charm was now a broken shell, haunted by the consequences of her actions. She retreated into the confines of our home, a self-imposed exile from the world that had once embraced her. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now a tomb of silence. Emily spent her days wandering aimlessly from room to room, her eyes vacant, her movements listless. She barely ate, barely slept, her body a fragile vessel consumed by grief and despair. I watched her decline with a mixture of pity and revulsion. This was the woman I had once loved, the woman I had vowed to cherish and protect. Now, she was a stranger, a ghost haunting the ruins of our shattered life. One evening, I found her curled up on the bathroom floor, her body racked with sobs. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a desperate plea for help, for forgiveness, for a way out of the abyss she had created. But I remained unmoved, my heart hardened by the years of betrayal and deceit. "Please, Mark," she whispered, her voice hoarse with despair. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to feel alive again." Her words were like daggers to my heart, a reminder of the love we had once shared, the life we had built together. But the pain of her betrayal was still too raw, the wounds too deep to heal. "It's too late, Emily," I said coldly, my voice devoid of any emotion. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." I turned and walked away, leaving her alone in her misery. As I closed the bathroom door behind me, I heard a muffled cry of despair, a sound that would forever haunt my dreams. I knew that I had crossed a point of no return, that there was no going back from the path I had chosen. The carousel of lies had spun out of control, and we were all caught in its destructive path. Despite the devastation I had wrought, a gnawing emptiness remained. Emily was broken, yes, but my own wounds refused to heal. The satisfaction of revenge was fleeting, replaced by a hollow ache that permeated my every waking moment. I realized that destroying Emily hadn't brought me closure. It had only amplified my own pain. Yet I couldn't stop. The carousel had to keep spinning. I had become addicted to the power, the control, the ability to manipulate those around me. I was the puppet master, orchestrating their lives, their emotions, their destinies. And Emily, despite her downfall, was still a pawn in my twisted game. I began to play with her emotions, offering glimpses of hope, then snatching them away. I would send her anonymous messages, expressing sympathy, offering support, only to withdraw at the last moment, leaving her confused and heartbroken. I would hint at reconciliation, then remind her of her betrayal, reopening old wounds that refused to heal. I watched her struggle, her emotions swinging wildly between hope and despair, and I felt a perverse sense of satisfaction. I was the author of her pain, the architect of her misery, and yet, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was also destroying myself in the process. The lines between victim and perpetrator blurred. I had become the very thing I despised, a manipulator, a deceiver, a master of cruelty. The mask I had worn for so long had become my reality, the darkness within me consuming the last vestiges of my humanity. The house was a battleground, our silent war waged in the shadows. Emily, once vibrant and full of life, was now a shadow of her former self, her spirit crushed, her hope extinguished. And I, the architect of her destruction, was trapped in my own web of deceit, unable to escape the consequences of my actions. The carefully constructed facade I had maintained for so long began to crumble. The stress of orchestrating Emily's downfall, the constant deception, the gnawing guilt, took its toll. I started making mistakes, leaving careless trails, dropping hints of my involvement in her misfortunes. One of Emily's former lovers, fueled by suspicion and a desire for revenge, started digging into the circumstances surrounding his own downfall. He uncovered a pattern, a series of coincidences that pointed to a single orchestrator. He followed the digital breadcrumbs, tracing the anonymous emails and burner phones back to me. The truth began to unravel, like a thread pulled from a tapestry, revealing the intricate web of deceit I had woven. Words spread quickly, whispers turning into accusations, suspicion into certainty. Friends and colleagues, once blinded by my carefully cultivated persona, now saw me for what I truly was: a manipulator, a liar, a monster. The tide turned against me. The same people who had once ostracized Emily now turned their backs on me, their judgment swift and merciless. I lost my job, my reputation, my social standing. The walls closed in, the isolation suffocating. I became a pariah just like Emily. But my downfall was different. Hers was a tragedy, a fall from grace fueled by misguided desires. Mine was a descent into darkness, a deliberate choice to embrace cruelty and inflict pain. The irony was not lost on me. I had sought to destroy Emily, to make her pay for her betrayal. But in the process, I had destroyed myself, revealing the darkness that lurked within my own heart. Stripped bare of my carefully constructed persona, I was left to confront the wreckage of my life. The house, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now echoed with the ghosts of our shattered past. Emily, though broken and defeated, was still there, a constant reminder of my own failings. I tried to avoid her, to escape the accusing silence that hung heavy between us. But there was nowhere to hide, no escape from the truth. Every corner of the house held a memory, every object a testament to our lost love, our shattered trust. One evening, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, staring at my own reflection. The face that stared back at me was gaunt, hollow-eyed, etched with the lines of stress and regret. It was the face of a stranger, a man I no longer recognized. And then, it hit me. I had become Emily. The manipulation, the deceit, the relentless pursuit of revenge. It had all transformed me into the very person I despised. I had become the monster I had created, the embodiment of the darkness I had unleashed. The realization was devastating. I had not only destroyed Emily, I had destroyed myself. The carousel of lies had spun its final cycle, leaving us both broken and lost in its wake. The mirror reflected not just my physical appearance, but the ugliness that had taken root in my soul. I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by a wave of self-loathing. The tears came then, hot and heavy, a release of the pain and guilt I had suppressed for so long. In that moment of raw vulnerability, I saw the truth. I was not the victim, nor was I the hero of this story. I was the villain, the architect of our shared destruction. The days that followed were a blur of despair and self-recrimination. I wandered through the empty rooms of our house, haunted by the ghost of the life we had once shared. Emily was still there, a silent presence, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and pity. We barely spoke, the silence between us a chasm too wide to bridge. The weight of our shared history, the pain of our betrayal, hung heavy in the air, suffocating us both. I tried to apologize, to explain, to offer some semblance of remorse. But the words felt hollow, meaningless in the face of the devastation I had caused. Emily listened, her expression unreadable, her eyes betraying a deep, unfathomable sadness. "I forgive you, Mark," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I can't forget." Her words were a death knell, a finality that shattered any lingering hope of reconciliation. We were two ships passing in the night, forever bound by the wreckage of our past, but destined to sail alone. The house became unbearable, a constant reminder of our shattered dreams. I packed a bag, leaving behind the remnants of a life that no longer existed. As I walked out the door, I glanced back at Emily, her silhouette framed in the doorway, a solitary figure against the backdrop of our empty home. I didn't look back again. There was nothing left to say, no gesture that could undo the damage I had inflicted. The carousel of lies had come to a stop, leaving us both stranded on the shores of a desolate reality. We were ghosts, forever haunting the ruins of our love, our trust, our shared humanity. I left the city, seeking anonymity in a small coastal town. I found a job as a handyman, a far cry from my previous life as a successful executive. The work was menial, the pay meager, but it provided a distraction from the relentless torment of my thoughts. The days were long, filled with the physical labor of repairing broken fences, leaky roofs, and crumbling walls. The evenings were even longer, stretching out before me like an endless expanse of emptiness. I would sit on the porch of my rented cabin, watching the sun sink below the horizon, the silence broken only by the crashing of waves against the shore. The memories haunted me, relentless and unforgiving. Emily's face, her laughter, her tears, played on an endless loop in my mind. I saw her everywhere, in the faces of strangers, in the shadows of the night, in the echoes of my own silence. I tried to escape the past, to bury it beneath the weight of my new life. But the past refused to be buried. It clung to me like a shadow, a constant reminder of the man I had been, the man I had become. The guilt was a heavy burden, a weight that threatened to crush me. I had destroyed Emily, shattered her life, and in doing so, I had lost my own soul. The revenge I had craved had brought me nothing but emptiness and despair. One day, I received a letter from a mutual friend. Emily had moved on, she wrote, rebuilding her life, finding new purpose in her work and her friendships. She had even started dating again, tentatively exploring the possibility of love after the devastation. The news brought a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a deep, abiding regret. Emily was moving on, finding a way to heal, to forgive, to love again. But I was stuck in the past, trapped in the prison of my own making. The echoes of silence followed me wherever I went, a constant reminder of the life I had lost, the love I had destroyed, the man I had become. The carousel of lies had stopped spinning, but its haunting melody lingered on, a testament to the enduring power of betrayal, revenge, and the enduring human capacity for both love and destruction.